Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Repeat Ron, and today we are going to be doing another Killing Floor 2 beginner loadout, or loadouts, and this is going to be looking at the demo. So why would beginners want to pick Demolitionist? Well, Demolitionist has quite a few advantages to it. Let's go over some of their passives and talk a bit more about them. So their passives are, they get 1% perk weapon damage per level. This is pretty standard, pretty much every class gets this, aside from like Medic. So, you know, more damage for your weapon is always good. You also get explosive resistance, 10% to start out with, plus 2% every level. This is great because one thing that kills a lot of demos is usually themselves. Demo explosions can do a lot of self-harm damage, and it can be pretty easy to, well, accidentally kill yourself with your explosives. So you can be just as much a threat to yourself as anything else in this game. You get extra ammo, 1 for every 5 levels. This is great, just extra ammo is really good, especially for something like C4 where you get a very limited amount. This way you get more of it, so that's always good. You get grenade supplier, which once per round, just like the support, you can give out a grenade to everybody on your team. This is really useful, especially if you have people on your team like Survivalist or Medic that's running medic grenades, or even like Firebug has the Molotovs, or Sharpshooter that has their freezing grenades. Really, any class benefits from an extra grenade anyway, just because it's something else you can use during the round, and if you don't use it, you're just getting a free grenade that you don't have to pay for. So that's pretty cool. You get door traps. You can do this by welding. I will show you that during the video. And you get reactive armor. So what reactive armor does is if you took a hit that would normally kill you, it does not. It drops you down to 5 health. It also does a little explosion, usually doing a little bit of damage to everything around it, and stunning everything around you. That's not always the case, and reactive armor can trigger on overtime effects as well. So fire or acid being spit on you, either of those can trigger your reactive armor after a little while. So keep that in mind. Like I said, this can happen once per round, so you can essentially use this up to, I believe, 11 times if you have a 10-round map, going from waves 1 to 10, and then the boss wave counting as the 11th one. So let's go over the builds that I would recommend. The first build I'd recommend is just the high damage demo build. This is pretty much the most common build you're going to see with demo, and it's just taking everything on the left side. So we go with Bombardier. This just increases your explosive perk weapon damage by 25%. More damage is great. We go with high impact rounds, which increases your direct hit damage with explosives by 25%, so more damage. And then we go with sonic resist rounds, which makes it so that your explosions are immune to the sonic scream. This can be really useful because sirens do actually cause you quite a bit of problems before level 15, or if you're not going with the sonic resist rounds. They can just eat any of your explosives and potentially protect a whole bunch of Zeds in an area. So, if you were going to go higher than this, you would still stay with the left side, going with armor piercing rounds, which increases your critical hit area damage even more with your explosive weapons. So if you hit something in like the head or the chest, depending on what type of enemy it is, you'll do even more. And then Destroyer of Worlds, which Destroyer of Worlds is one of the best perks in the entire game, if not the best perk in the entire game, where during Z time, any of your explosions pretty much cause mini nukes. These nukes do a lot of damage, as well as do damage over time, and cause radiation damage to everything around it. Pretty much poison damage. And they are great for just completely choking off an area or killing a whole bunch of small stuff, or just, you know, really weakening a whole bunch of big stuff. Alright, so let's talk about demo starting equipment. So we start out with the grenade pistol. The grenade pistol is a great weapon for beginners. Although it doesn't hold that many shots and it is only a single shot weapon, it can do a ton of damage. Also, another really good thing about it is that you cannot harm yourself with it. This is fantastic for beginners, because a weapon that doesn't harm you is great, whereas so many of your other weapons can potentially kill you. This one cannot. It also is unique compared to the other starting weapons in that it's more expensive than all the other starting weapons. It costs $300 to buy. You can't find this on the ground, at least in regular maps. Of course, custom maps are a bit different. And it actually sells for more than any of the other starting weapons. So you will be 50 cash ahead at the start if you decide to sell this weapon. As stated, you won't always have the most ammo, so bashing with this weapon actually makes a lot of sense, as bashing with it is generally stronger than using your knife. You can use your knife if you'd like, if you want to save extra money. But it's not really necessary with this weapon. Bashing is definitely going to help you a lot. And then if you get enough of the little guys together in a group, you can try to blow them up, and you might be able to kill all of them, which is ideal. This weapon is also not very good against bloats. Most of your explosive weapons aren't the best against bloats. They can soak up quite a bit of damage. Rioters can soak up a lot of damage from this weapon too, so keep that in mind. It's usually better to engage them with the 9mm pistol, which can be your best friend in the early waves. Now the first weapon I would recommend for this loadout is actually the grenade pistol, because the grenade pistol is just so handy. I'm just going to keep it. You can upgrade it. It upgrades very well. It's one of the best tier 1 weapons to actually upgrade and gets very, very strong. So I may have picked one of the worst maps to actually show how door traps work, but at least there is a few doors here. So what you want to do with door traps is weld up so much. You have a welding integrity and a trap integrity. It's about 40% of the weld. So long as you weld it up 40%, or you can put your trap on even if the door is completely welded, this will put the explosive on the door. You can also take this off just by cutting away at it. And you can potentially do this just to weaken the door a little bit more so that it's a bit easier to break, because sometimes it can be kind of annoying if the Zeds just aren't willing to fight you, aren't willing to try to break the door. They're just sitting behind it. Once it goes off, it does do a lot of damage to everybody, but it does completely destroy the door. So keep that in mind. You should also be looking out for any sort of secondary weapon, because most of Demo's tier 2 weapons, and honestly their tier 1 weapon, isn't very good at ammo consistency. You're almost always running low on ammo for the first part of a demo game. That's not unusual, unless you're in a map with a ton of doors where you can put up a lot of welded traps and just kill everything that way. You also have a very unique grenade. This is the half stick of dynamite. You can light this and throw it. It has the longest fuse time of any of the grenades. It also has a very large explosive radius, and it does a ton of damage. It's tied with the most damage out of any of the grenades. However, with its long fuse, you will have to keep that in mind. That is, unless you hit something directly with it. If you hit something directly with your dynamite, it will blow up instantly. This is great for trying to hit, well, anything big. Scrakes and flesh pounds especially do not like the half stick of dynamite. It has a very high chance to stun anything that you hit that it doesn't kill. So it's pretty good for that. However, keep in mind, it's not always the best grenade to throw right at a Zed right in front of you, because you can blow yourself up very easy with the half stick of dynamite. So, the first weapon, well, besides the grenade pistol I'd recommend with this, is the kaboom stick. The kaboom stick is an absolutely amazing weapon and one of my favorite weapons in the entire game. It has a devastating amount of damage, having just a base damage of 530 damage per barrel, up to 1160 damage, or 1060 damage, firing both barrels.
Last chance.
That is very, very devastating. This works the exact same way as the double barrel does for the support. So if you jump in the air and fire both barrels, it will send you backward, assuming you're not pointing at the ground to try to launch yourself higher, so you can use this to jump over any sort of structure. And this is just one of Demo's best weapons, period. It's amazing. It also cannot hurt you. It's very similar to the grenade pistol. You cannot be hurt by this weapon. So even if you're shooting something directly at your feet, it doesn't matter. You won't be able to hurt yourself with this weapon. And as stated, it is incredibly devastating to anything you hit with this. This loadout is going to mostly be using the kaboom stick to kill pretty much anything, unless of course you're running a little bit low on ammo. Then you can switch over to the grenade pistol, but use the grenade pistol mostly as a secondary, the kaboom stick as your primary. You can upgrade both these weapons if you would like, and quite frankly the kaboom stick works with everything. And it does not need upgrades. With its upgrades, it does increase in damage by even more, which is pretty insane. But it really doesn't need upgrades. It's already quite powerful just by itself. So, Zeds to look out for with the demo. There's a couple of Zeds that the demo doesn't do the best against, but demo generally does quite well against everything. As stated, they don't do well against sirens without the sonic rounds, because sirens can just cancel out your grenades and you can't do anything to them. Scrakes can be a little bit finicky with some of your weapons. That being said, you're not particularly bad at killing Scrakes. It's just certain weapons might take a little bit longer than others, particularly your rocket launcher. The RPG, for some reason, does 4 times damage when it directly impacts a Scrake. That is not the explosive damage, that is actually the impact damage. As stated before, Rioters can give you some issue with some of your weapons. Their armor will deflect some of the damage that you do to them, as well as Bloats can be a bit tanky towards your explosives as well. That being said, none of those are really that difficult, and you are one of the best classes for fighting Flesh Pounds, because Flesh Pounds are weak to explosives, and pretty much all of your weapons are just explosives. But once again, Scrakes, even though they are kind of strong, with weapons like the Kaboom Stick, you can still kill them pretty easily. Just use the same tactics that you would use with the double barrel for the support. Robots also don't give you that much issue. They're generally weak to explosives as well. And any sort of small things like this, the Kaboom Stick can kill. If you don't know where to fire with the Kaboom Stick, if you're being swarmed, simply aim at your feet and fire. You can do this while jumping and firing both barrels. Try to move to one side or the other, whichever way you think is easier for you to get away from the enemies. And you can usually just jump right over their head. Also, I should go over, should you buy armor with demo? Honestly, buying armor with demo is not a bad idea. Demo is not a particularly tanky class. They don't have anything that gives them bonus mobility or bonus survivability, besides just having more and more damage. Or having more utility to do things like knock down enemies or stun them. You are not the like medic or berserker or SWAT where you're just naturally tanky at the start. So buying armor is not a bad option. Oh, the same tip also applies to demo that I gave to support, which is try to be as far away from the pod as possible when interacting with it. Don't push your face right up against the pod, because if you do, your teammates cannot interact with you and they cannot get their free grenade from you. So make sure you stand at least a reasonable distance back. You don't necessarily need to be on the very edge of it, but the further away you are, the easier it is for your teammates to grab ammo from you. Alright, now the second build with demo goes a little bit something like this. First off, we're going to start out with Shock Trooper. This has increased the reload speed of all of your weapons by about 20%. This can make certain weapons feel way more usable, especially like the very slow reloading grenade launchers. This can definitely help, as well as you get bonus knockdown power, which is kind of useful. We go with high impact rounds again for more direct damage with our explosives. You could go with extra rounds, but I honestly don't find extra rounds all that useful. Having 5 more explosives usually doesn't help all that much with most of the weapons. It's kind of nice to have, you know, 5 more RPG shots, but I'd rather just have more damage with my RPG. And then we go with fragmentation rounds. This is where we do not care about the sonic screams. We are just concerned about dealing damage to everything around us. After this, once again, I'd probably recommend going with armor piercing rounds to have even more damage with your explosives. Concussion rounds is an option. Increasing your stun, stumble, and knockdown power of all your weapons is kind of useful. Most of your weapons already have pretty high chances to do that, but this almost makes them guaranteed to do this to most Zeds. And then once again, I would recommend going with Destroyer of Worlds. This build overall does make it a little bit easier for the first wave, simply because you still do have all the damage, or at least most of the damage that you really need to kill small things, but you have much faster reload speed, which makes the gun feel way more lively. So the first weapon I recommend with this build is the M79 grenade launcher. This is a pretty decent weapon because it already has a very large explosive radius, so this is increasing your explosive radius even further, as well as the faster reloads really makes this weapon feel much better to use in my opinion. The slower reload on this thing is kind of annoying. Having a faster reload is a bit better. It's a pretty straightforward weapon though. This weapon, however, does have some added mechanics that the grenade pistol and Kaboom Stick do not. And that is, if you are too close and fire off your explosive round, it will not go off. Same happens if you shoot it too close to yourself, like at the ground. It won't go off. It has to travel a certain distance in order to explode. Now to make the most of this, I find it easiest to jump up and aim at the ground a little bit further in front of you from where you're aiming, and then just try to have the round spread out and hit them. One problem with this though, as you'll see, is that you are doing health damage to yourself. So you do have to keep an eye on your health. This is much better at longer ranges, especially if you have somebody in your team like a berserker or a medic that can sit at a choke point and hold the area. Well, you just throw explosives down, because this is a fantastic build for getting just a ton of kills against small things. You don't need the most accuracy with this build. You just need to understand what your weapons are capable of, how to use them effectively, and where you mostly want to aim them. The grenade launcher is really all that you need for this build, but I will be adding to this. For this build in particular, you do actually have even more weaknesses towards certain Zeds, because your grenades take certain time to arm. So things like crawlers and stalkers actually become much more of a threat against you, because you will need more room so that they can't get close to you and stop your grenades from blowing up. You'll still be able to kill them with the grenade that doesn't explode, but you won't be using the maximum effect of your grenade launchers. Now for the second weapon of this loadout, you could honestly just go with the kaboom stick again. This will solve pretty much all of your weaknesses and would probably be the best option. There's a couple other options you could go with though too. The M16 if you want to just shoot small things. M16 is a pretty good rifle overall. The Steel Squill if you want the maximum amount of damage, at least direct fire damage. Or you can even go with C4. C4 is not something I really recommend to new players though, because there is a very high chance of blowing yourself up, especially with this build where it has even a larger explosion radius. That being said, you can still use it. I'm going to use the Steel Squill for this, but I would probably recommend the Kaboom Stick being the strongest option here, but we've already seen the Kaboom Stick, so we'll talk about the Steel Squill. This is a direct fire weapon that has an explosive harpoon that takes time to go off, or its secondary fire can automatically set the harpoons off. Keep in mind though, this can still hurt you, but this has no distance that it needs to travel in order for it to go off. You can set it off immediately, you can fire it at your feet, although that's not really recommended. You can of course shoot it through many Zeds and blow up quite a few. You generally want the most range with this loadout. Faster reloads will make this weapon feel a little bit more consistent. This weapon can be used with either of the builds though. It's a pretty strong weapon overall, and it's probably one of my favorites. But it is a little bit of a more difficult beginner build to use. Simply because there is a very high chance you can blow yourself up with this. Maybe not as high as if you're using like C4 with this build, but I would consider that more of an advanced loadout for people who don't have a habit of blowing themselves up. Once again, if you'd like to, you can upgrade either of these weapons. Demo really doesn't need upgrades with most of their weapons. The majority of their weapons, aside from maybe like the grenade pistol, are extremely strong by themselves, and even the grenade pistol is pretty strong by itself. A position like this is actually great for demo, at least with this particular build. It's pretty good with any build, but this gives you a lot of sight to where you can see any enemies coming close to you, and it gives you a lot of options to shoot explosives. It's also a fairly just safe position on this map. Where Zeds can only come from one direction, but you can see them from multiple directions, and you can fire at those multiple directions. Alright, so that is the Demo class, and Demo is an extremely fun class to play. They are a very high risk, high reward type of class, which is why so many people love them. So, very fun class. Both these builds are pretty strong. I would recommend the first build. The first build is just a fantastic beginner and even an advanced player build on Demo. You know, if you're going to be more advanced about it, maybe take the grenade pistol away and put really any other explosive weapon in its place. Just use the Kaboom Stick. The Kaboom Stick is crazy good. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Next time we're going to be looking at Firebug, which that should be very interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys did and you would like to see more of my content, be sure that you're subscribed, so that way you get notifications whenever I put anything out. As well as give this video a big old thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will talk to all of you guys next time. Till then, stay cool, and bye!